Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Can't Stop Snapping, the official podcast of MarvelSnapZone.com. First of all, everybody, I just want to say thank you so much for the great outpouring of support for the podcast with the global release of Marvel Snap. Our listening numbers have gone far and beyond what they've been during the beta, so both to longtime listener and new listener, I really appreciate you listening to the podcast, showing your support. I just want to give a shout out if you're new to the podcast or if you've been listening to a long time and you haven't yet, make sure you're following the podcast, subscribing to it on YouTube if that's where you're listening, that you're liking the podcast, that you're rating the podcast, all these things on whatever platform you're on, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., just to help get exposure and help bring more and more new people into the podcast. As always, if there's feedback or thoughts you want to share with the podcast, we can be found on Twitter at can't_stop_snap. Love to hear your thoughts, your ideas, the questions you want answered on the podcast, etc. there. As well as we do have a channel in the Marvel Snap Zone Discord that's called Episode Discussion. If you're ever wanting to get feedback and have a little bit more hands-on, like a Discord conversation, feel free to jump into the Marvel Snap Zone Discord and we can talk to you there, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, thank you so much for the great support. We have a great conversation today about 1 week into the Marvel Snap global release, as well as finally a breakdown and a discussion about Miles Morales. We were a little behind on that, just with the lead up to global release and the actual global release, so appreciate your patience. Last thing I want to say before we jump into the episode is we will have a new time and a new day that we will be releasing episodes. So this is the plan going forward. Every Thursday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, those are U.S. time zones, a new episode of Can't Stop Snapping will be releasing wherever you listen to this podcast. So make sure to put that in your calendar. Make sure you've got it marked. Thursdays in the morning, U.S. time, evening, Europe time. That is when a new episode of this podcast will be available each week. Without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of Can't Stop Snapping, the official podcast of MarvelSnapZone.com. Today we're going to be covering a couple of topics. One of the biggest is that we are now about a week into the global release of Marvel Snap, and we're going to just share our thoughts on the excitement that we've seen on social media with the new players, with the old players, as well as some of the early success stories that Second Dinner has had with the launch of this game, etc. As always, I am joined by a guest host, and I am joined by a first-time guest host, Den. Den is joining me to talk about this topic and a couple other smaller topics here at the end. Den, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to join you. I've actually been following it a bit from the outside.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you here. Before we jump into our topics of conversation, I would love to give you just a minute for the listeners who may not be familiar with you to just kind of give us a little bit of your background with card games, with Marvel Snap, with content creation. What kind of brought you here to us obviously having this conversation now?
So as for Marvel Snap, I'm basically known for writing a ton of articles for Marvel Snap Zone. As for card games, I have played the most of my career on Hearthstone. I had a bit of a breakthrough on Legends of Runeterra at some point, winning a seasonal tournament. And this is actually how I got the owners of Marvel Snap Zone, who I worked with on Legends of Runeterra. And when Marvel Snap got released, they asked me if I wanted to make the switch and come over for Marvel Snap and try it out. And just like a lot of people currently, I quickly fell in love with the game, and I've been following it since I think the second month of beta. I think the game has been out since May, and I started playing it quite seriously since June.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and you, like you say, you've been putting out a lot of great articles that I know a lot of people have enjoyed. Let's start there a little bit, just talking about, we're 1 week into the global release. I know that, you've posted on Twitter and such that there's just been kind of a huge demand for a lot of articles. Like, what topics have you been seeing that newcomers and beta players alike have been kind of wanting to know and read kind of with the global release of Marvel Snap?
Well, obviously there's a ton of demand for beginner-friendly content. which I think is being handled quite well at the moment. I mean, a lot of YouTubers from other card games are trying the game and making videos about it. I've seen other people write articles about the game. So a lot of things about, for one, how to get started, the mistakes that you should make when you start the game, where is it worth investing your gold, like all these kind of things that you want to know when you're starting a new game, like how to kind of not waste your economy and things like this. As for the rest, I've seen a lot of people ask, like, how does the game evolve? I guess, like, Marvel Snap kind of has a frustrating part to it, which is the collecting of the cards. It's really unique in the way it allows players to collect the cards. And so I've actually had a lot of talks and see a lot of people discuss about, like, kind of wonder, is it going to be frustrating when I'm in pool 3? How am I going to collect my cards? What's gonna happen? Am I gonna have fun with the game when I only collect like one card every 2-3 days? So I think this is the big thing, and it probably will be the growing concern as time passes.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I totally understand the concern. I mean, people that played during the beta had very similar concerns, right? And obviously we've seen.
Yeah, it was really tough.
Yeah, and we've seen some evolutions of that, obviously, over the last couple of months, right? So people are kind of coming into a more finalized product with the caches and how unlocking cards works on the collection tracker. But I do understand the concern. I think, obviously, right now, right, once you do get into the pool 3, I'm actually still in the pool 3. I know a lot, there are people, beta players out there that have unlocked every card. I have about, I want to say 14 cards left I need to unlock in pool 3 personally. And
I think I'm 5 off.
Yeah, I don't know about you.
Yeah.
I'm unlocking, I want to say, 2 to 3 cards a week. I don't know if that's similar for you.
Yeah, I would say like one every 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
And maybe it gets a little better when I really farm the season pass or like use my gold to reroll missions. But overall, yeah, it's one every 2-3 days, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for me, that feels okay. I think that, what's the play cycle for me right now is I log in, at least once a day. I play my dailies. Sometimes I get on a couple times. I'm playing a couple times throughout the day and kind of doing them when the dailies reload at different times. So I'm doing that, and that kind of keeps me coming back, right? And then obviously that kind of build up to being able to open caches. I personally like to wait until I have several caches available to open. I don't know if you do the same. I know some people, when you're unlocking stuff on the tracker, you just kind of, people just open it as they get everything. I get my credits and I get my boosters, but I don't open the caches personally till I have like 6 or 8 of them. I don't know if that's just because I want the bigger dopamine dump of, because usually when I do that, I get like 2 cards, right? And maybe 1 variant. And so it feels like, whoa, I just got a ton. Basically what I'm saying is that I think there is kind of that gameplay loop, we're used to in free-to-play games, right? Where there's different things to kind of get you to come back in, and you build up your currencies, whatever they are, to kind of further your expansion, in this case with the cards. But I understand the concern. Where I'm going with this, I guess, is that I think it's okay for right now, but that's not going to be enough forever, right? We all know that. There needs to be more systems, more modes, friendly play. Go ahead.
Definitely, like Marvel Snap right now is not a finished product, and this is a discussion I've had with other players from, I would say, like more established games, like for example Legends of Runeterra, Hearthstone, games that came in and immediately established that position of, we want to be a leader, we want to offer tournaments, we want an esports scene, we want big stuff. Marvel Snap has never talked about trying to go into esports, never talked about trying to establish like huge tournaments with like 10K or something like that to win. So obviously when you're an avid card game player like I am, for example, there are days where I'm like, man, I want to play the game, but I don't have much to do on it at the same time. And I can definitely understand why people would be frustrated by, you want to play the game because it's good, but at the same time, you don't feel like the game is rewarding you for the time you're putting in. And to those people, I feel like the only thing we can say is, actually, this is great feedback for the team. Like, the team should be happy to have people actually tell them, give me more. I like your game. This is not enough. I think this is one of the better feedbacks you can have as a game. But at the same time, you got to do something about it, because if you let it like last too long, people are just going to quit.
Yeah. and this is my personal opinion. You may disagree. I feel like Second Dinner has earned my trust a lot. They definitely are going for kind of an agile approach, right? They're iteratively adding to the game. They did that through the beta, right? And I obviously I'm not there. I'm not a fly on the wall at the Second Dinner office. I guess they don't. I mean, they have an office, but a lot of them work remotely. But I think they're going to iteratively, with each patch, I see them keeping a similar cadence, probably of every 3 to 4 weeks, adding more, right? Obviously, balance changes, but also new features, new modes. Like, I think those are going to come. It's not going to be one dump of like, okay, here's 6 months, and then all of a sudden we get 5 features. I think it's going to be, kind of one new thing a month, because that's kind of the approach they've tried to take, right? They try to iteratively add new pieces to the UI, new features, new things, and so I think that's what they're going to keep doing. And it's different, like you say, it's different than Legends of Runeterra and Hearthstone, where yes, they've added things over time, but when they launched at first, they had kind of more modes and more things built in. But I think
and a different system, like the expansion system, where you dump like 100 cards every 2 or 3 months, is completely different from what Marvel Snap has established.
Yeah. So I think I'm fumbling my words, but essentially I have a positive outlook. I think that, if you're listening to this and you're having some of the similar thoughts or feelings we're talking about that people have shared, of kind of frustration or concern, I think Second Dinner has shown that they are going to definitely listen to feedback. They've shown us a roadmap of things they're working on. There's a lot of bright spots on there, and they're going to add those iteratively, right? So I don't think it's going to be forever to wait for all of those. I think we're going to get one, potentially next month, and then another one in December, and kind of just build more features and modes as we go along. Yeah, I
definitely. And they already announced a lot of it. I think the big one that a lot of people are waiting for is the collector's token. Apparently, we're going to get to target specific cards that we want.
Yep.
And I think that's going to take a lot out of the frustration of people that are like maybe seeing decks or like watching videos, watching people playing from beta, which have almost the full collection. They're like, oh my God, these decks look so cool. And then they realize, wow, I'm like 2-3 months off from being able to play that. I think this frustration should be like solved in part when the collector's token are coming in.
I agree with you. I saw this. I may be misquoting, so sorry for anybody who saw this. There's a channel in the official Discord for Marvel Snap and Second Dinner where people, ask questions, give feedback, etc. And Steven, he's one of the people from Second Dinner who often responds to those, and he said something to the effect of once they add the collector's tokens, at that time, they hope to be releasing one new card a week. I don't know if you saw that message. I saw somebody screenshot.
I have seen something about it, yes.
Yeah, somebody screenshotted that, threw it on Twitter, and I thought that was really cool. Obviously, they've been doing one new location per week, and that's been awesome. But really, if they can get to the cadence of one new card a week, I mean, that's pretty awesome, right? As far as keeping people coming back to the game and getting excited, right? With everything you're saying, right? I mean, the collector's token kind of, you have that randomized piece where you're still unlocking cards randomly on the collector's track, but it gives you that little bit of agency to better target the cards you want to unlock. And this is going to be, helpful for people, whether they're in Pool 1, Pool 2, Pool 3, they start the game 3 months from now, etc. And then obviously for people that, like us, that are close to the end, or people that have already unlocked every card, one new card a week, right? That's going to keep us coming back to try out the new card, and that's probably in addition to the season pass card, right?
I would guess so, or maybe it's going to be like different ways, like maybe once per month you get season pass, and then you have more cards added to the game outside of it. But as you said, I guess the most important part of all this is more reasons to come back and play Marvel Snap. I feel like this is the thing most people have been asking for. Like, missions are not enough, especially now that the game has largely exploded to the masses. Like, if the game is good, there's going to be demand, and I feel like they know they need to fill that demand, and this being a card game, the first thing you need to do is provide cards.
Yep. So we know they're working on that. We know there's some exciting news there. Just want to talk about a couple other things on Twitter. I think it's been great. I think... I'm very happy for the team at Second Dinner. I've seen a lot of praise. Obviously, there's been lots of people playing in the beta, but now you got this whole new slew of both just, more casual players, but also kind of professional card game players who are trying out the game for the first time with the release. And Ben Brode and Second Dinner have been getting a lot of love on Twitter, and I'm really glad that they can kind of soak that in, right? They've worked really hard to get to this point. There's a lot of work left to be done, and digital card game nowadays is never done, right? It's like you keep it going forever is kind of the goal. So, I think there's still a lot to be done, but I'm glad they've been able to kind of soak in the praise, soak in the appreciation that a lot of people have been throwing their way. So, with that being said, I just wanted to turn to another thing that I think is kind of cool with the game. I think within 24 hours of global release on the Apple App Store, Marvel Snap made it to #1 on the free games. So that was, as of recording this, I want to say about, I think it was 7 days ago. So that it made it to #1 on the list. And I just checked as we were starting to record here, and it is still #1. So obviously we don't have the numbers, right? I'd love if we could have the numbers and talk about that and compare it to numbers for other games, but obviously we don't have that. But I don't know. I just think that's really cool that they've been able to reach #1 and sustain that even for a week. The mobile gaming landscape is really competitive. There seems to always be a new fad or a new game. But I'm really excited for the people at Second Dinner and that it's #1. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it shows that the game has drawn interest, because during beta, one discussion that I saw a lot was the choice of the countries they released the game in. A lot of people were really like baffled, like, why are they picking these countries? Why is there nothing in Europe? Why is there nothing in North America or things like this? Like, I mean, rich countries most of the time where you would want to publish your game because you expect this is where people have the most money to invest into. And I feel like this created a lot of like waiting, a lot of eagerness to try the game, and it kind of like produced this effect that after 1 week the game like completely exploded and has been #1, and hopefully can stay that way for a little bit.
Yeah. My sister and brother-in-law have been playing the game in the beta, and obviously, now playing in public release, and they've been able to introduce it to a few of their friends. And I think this is just a common phrase, right? Like, anytime somebody picks up Marvel Snap, the thing I hear back from them is, I can't stop playing, or, oh my gosh, this is an amazing game, or I didn't realize how fun this would be, oh, I'm addicted, right? Things like that. And I definitely think that plays into it going to #1, is the fact that once you try it, the onboarding process for the game is great. The tutorial kind of walks you through and kind of steps you through some matches all the way up until you start playing bots and real people, right? It really just kind of walks you through how to play the game, how to enjoy the game, how to build decks. I think it's just very accessible and user-friendly than maybe some other games are.
Definitely. Like, I think the way they build the game from the outside, a lot of card game players thought it would be too simple. Like, we only have 6 turns, it's not enough. We only have 12 cards, we can't really be deck builders. I've seen a lot of criticism on how little the game would allow, but in the end, this made everyone able to play Marvel Snap and understand it quite quickly. And they actually made interesting cards and very unique effects, which have made also like old-time card gamers enjoy the game. So I think for now, they have found a really good balance from people that never touched a card game before and people that actually were looking for a new one to try out.
Yeah, I think it's kind of bringing the digital card game experience to the masses in a way that Magic, that Legends and Runeterra, Hearthstone, all of them, these games are accessible in their own way, right? But like none of them, I think, have been as simple and as beginner friendly as Marvel Snap, but also able to include a level of complexity, right?
I think I would agree to this, because when you pick the game up at first, it really feels simple. And I think also the way they mapped the card and in the progression, like the first cards are really simple to understand. And as you start getting into pool 2, or maybe even towards the end of pool 1, you start having more complicated effects. You start having more like combo-oriented effects. And now that I think about it, I really think like the cards that you actually get their effects is more complicated to understand as you progress. And I think this is a great way to also do it because, I mean, cards like, I don't know, Khazar, Jessica Jones, Blue Marvel, the ones that are dominating the early experience, they're really, really simple.
Yeah.
But you can keep them for a long time if you like them. But if you don't like them and you want to play like more complex strategies, like combos, like, I don't know, magic that allows you to have an extra turn, so you draw more cards and stuff like this, you're also able to do that. And I think it's really where the game shines.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I think that they've really done a good job on the onboarding experience and how they've fleshed that out. Well, kind of turning the tables again, I'd like to talk about another topic, which is Miles Morales and the latest season pass. As listeners know that have been listening to the podcast for a while, we always like to kind of talk about the latest season pass, talk about the new card and where it fits into the game, and kind of compare that card against the other season pass cards. It's obviously not something we need to do. I personally kind of enjoy it, and obviously the season pass cards kind of stand out because they are locked behind kind of a paywall with the season pass currently, and you can't get them until several months after the season pass if you choose not to buy them. So I think they're kind of worth comparing against each other in that way. So we didn't really get to talking about Miles Morales early in the month as we prepared for global release. So for listeners, Miles Morales Spider-Man is a 4-cost, 5-power card. With the ability that reads, if a card moved last turn, this costs 1. Hey all, I wanted to take a quick moment to talk to you about MarvelSnapZone.com. Marvel Snap Zone is a one-stop shop for everything Marvel Snap on the internet. They have new articles nearly every day that cover deck building, strategy, card breakdowns, etc. They have a great collection tracker tool and a deck list builder that works off of that collection tracker so that you can know what decks you can build with your current card collection. They have guides and deck lists for all level of players and all collection level of players. Make sure to go to MarvelSnapZone.com and check it out now. So an interesting card, obviously with its 4 cost and 5 power, it's not a great stat line. But it does have that enabler ability where it can get down to a 1 cost. I guess I'll just say this first, Dan. I have not seen a lot of Miles Morales Spider-Man play in Marvel Snap. Have you seen a lot of people trying out this card over the last month?
I have seen people try it. Unfortunately, I haven't seen many people keep it. But for Miles' defense, I don't think it's the card's fault, to be honest. I think it's the archetypes that for now Miles is pushed in. I think we're just either we haven't found it, or it's just that unfortunately the whole move mechanic and things like this, they're quite weak in today's Marvel Snap. Maybe they get buffed in the future, but I also think compared to I don't know, Nick Fury or Daredevil, these kind of cards, or even Thor, Miles Morales really is a card that is bad if your deck doesn't look to actually activate it regularly. The other ones like Daredevil could be considered just a nice 2-drop. Nick Fury, I actually consider it to be one of the best cards for a beginner. You just play it on 5 and suddenly you have access to a whole game for turn 6. So they were more general and they struggled to find their deck. Miles Morales kind of had the opposite problem. It was easy to find the decks, but the decks weren't strong enough for the card to shine.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. I think the move archetype, and that was exactly where I was thinking this conversation might go, because that's my thought. Marvel Snap today has a couple of different archetypes, right? You have the destroy archetype, the discard archetype. You have different combos, things like Wong, Mystique, kind of enabler combo cards. You have tech cards, right? So you kind of categorize cards and archetypes in this way. And out of all of those things, really the move archetype, I think, unfortunately, has really yet to truly shine. I will say, back a couple of patches, they did buff Kraven the Hunter. Kraven to be a little bit better, right? So every time a card moves to it, it gets a buff, it has better stat line, things like this. And you obviously unlock it in Pool 1 or Pool 2. So it's you can kind of build the move archetype early on, right? You get some move cards. But overall, you just can't get, I think, in my experience, you can't get as much power reliably as you can with just any other combo or any other card, right? Like you said a couple things like Khazar, Blue Marvel, Onslaught onto something, Mystique onto something. Like all of these things usually produce large buffs for your cards that you have down. And those just all feel, really scalable and can really multiply the power that's on the board. Where the move archetype, unless you really get things kind of ramping up in the correct order, whether that's you play Vulture, who, gets buffed every time he moves, or Craven, and you get Human Torch and, everything moving into the right spots on the right turns, right? It just feels very systematic and it has to go the right way, in my experience and what I've seen, to really get the same amount of quantity of power on the board that you can with other types of decks.
Yeah, I think it's really true what you're saying, and also Marvel Snap being based on the three locations, move feels like kind of the weakest archetype, like out of the big ones, as you mentioned, like destroy, discard, ongoing, on reveal. The problem with move, it's much more sensitive to location disruption compared to the other ones, because your goal is to move from one to another. So as soon as you block one, the whole archetype kind of falls apart. And I feel like disruption has been really popular in Marvel Snap because we only have 6 turns. So if you're able to block 1-2 turns to the opponent, you immediately derail their game plan. And that probably hurts the deck a lot as well. Like, as you said, I think like move needs to be able to develop more points more easily to have a chance currently, because it's too easy to disrupt it. So it needs to be easy to develop points in return if we want it to be competitive.
Yes, agreed. I don't, I'm not a game designer. You're not necessarily a game designer either.
Nope.
But that being said, like, do you have any thoughts? I mean, I'll go first, but I wonder if we have any thoughts on, what things could be done, because I don't know if it's a simple stat line change, right? Maybe some higher base powers. Or 1 or 2 cards in the move archetype get lower energy costs to play, right? You definitely can play around with it from just a stat line perspective. Do you think it's more that route that you think would help it more and more easily, or do you think it's more reworking some of the abilities and how they function?
It's really tough to say, because if you compare to other archetypes, move has a lot of like similar cards and their counterparts are really good. Like, for example, sometimes I try to compare Human Torch and Deadpool. They're really similar, yet Deadpool has produced a great deck. Human Torch still has to actually be considered a good card. You have Vulture, which you could compare to like Morbius or something like that in discard, and kind of the same. Morbius is just considered a great turn 2 on discard, while Vulture, while it started super hot, now is considered difficult to work with. Like, I feel like there's so many of these comparisons, and each step of the way, move kind of loses the comparison. So I don't know if it needs to be completely buffed, because it could be a problem the other way, like we just buffed everything and now it's out of control. Or if it's just maybe move needs to find kind of its own thing, because now we can compare it to the other archetypes. And because we can compare it, whenever it loses the comparison, we want to play the other stuff. So I think I would try to get move to be more unique. So either reworking a couple cards to make them more like unique, or just introducing new ways to move and actually give the archetype really its identity.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment. As you're talking, like, one other thing, that could have an impact, obviously, is cards yet to be released, right? Obviously the team at Second Dinner has designed, the cards that are currently in the game, but we know from leaks, from, data that's been found in the game, there's dozens and dozens of cards that are on the horizon, right? That have already been designed. Obviously, yes, they can still they can still be reworked, right? We know that they're not
as long as they're not in, they can cancel it, they can rework it, they can change it, they can do whatever they want. Yes.
But I know we'll see, right? They're not going to never do another move card, so we know we'll see more move cards in the future. So that could be another piece to this, right? a new card can create a new deck, a new combo, right? We saw that with Wave, for Wave being the first season pass card, right? There was no
Yeah.
Death Wave, or there weren't certain combos you could play before Wave existed in the game. And I think that's one of the exciting things about Marvel Snap, is that each card has some potential to really create kind of a new playstyle, a new deck, etc. So that might be its best bet, right? Maybe it's not the changing abilities. Maybe it's not just over buffing everything. Maybe it is eventually, we get more cards. Now, Miles Morales, you say, okay, well, that is a new move card, and we've already kind of said, I don't know how consistent or great it is, but who knows? Maybe there's a couple other move cards that come in the next couple of months, then all of a sudden we have something really great to play with. So time will tell for move, but I'm with you. I think as of right now, I think it's the weakest archetype, and I think my playtime shows that I rarely ever play move decks. Maybe one.
Yeah, I love Bounce, which has elements.
Yes.
Of the move archetype. Like, for example, I'm in love with Iron Fist. I think Iron Fist is such a good one drop, because to me, one cost cards should be about being flexible and not be about like generating a ton of power, or like just like a Bonimo, like make it super difficult afterwards, like make it a super difficult effect to work with. So I think Iron Fist is great, but the thing is, Iron Fist is a good card, and it found a way to be played. Like, some people played in Kazoo, I played in Bounce. I've seen it played just when the hot location is one that you can't play on, but you barely see it able to help the move archetype. So for now, I think move's best thing is that it can help the other ones. But I feel like when you put too many cards that are aiming at moving in the same deck, suddenly, as soon as you get a bad location, as soon as the opponent is playing, I don't know, like Professor X, Storm, these kind of cards that can derail you playing onto a location, it just falls apart. So maybe for now, we shouldn't even consider an archetype. We should just consider a support mechanic that can help various decks, and stop trying to just make the move deck. Maybe we just don't have the tools yet.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I had an interesting thought. When you're talking locations, right, and that is one of kind of the biggest counters to the move archetype. And I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think there are a lot of great cards that have move abilities that enable other decks or work well with other decks. They aren't like a fully move deck. It would be interesting if there was some kind of move card that moved but could also change locations as it moved. I think that would be an interesting type of card. I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I think that'd be interesting, right? If like somehow you could move it once per game and it like changes the location as you move it.
Yeah, I think I would love a card that, like, how Quake just shuffles the location?
Yeah.
I would love a card that just allows you to literally like pick. I don't know if that exists in the Marvel universe. I'm not much into the knowledge of Marvel, to be honest, like outside of the movies. But I guess like something like a World Mover or World Breaker or something like that, where you just, when you play it, you just pick two locations and you switch them, but the cards that are played on it actually move with it. So you would be able to impact the field, like you could change the locations, but at the same time you would move your cards because they would be going somewhere else while they'll still stay on the location you want them. Yeah, I think that would be an incredible card.
That would be, yeah, I feel like it would have to be like a 6-drop with like not a lot of power.
Yeah, like a 5 or a 6, something like Aimdol like. But for example, like the problem with Aimdol at this point is everybody knows once you start seeing Vulture, Multiple Man, and that kind of card, Aimdol is coming on. And I mean, for us in beta at least, personally, like Aimdol isn't scaring me anymore. I know how to answer the card. I know what it does. I know when it comes down. I feel like it's not surprising enough to be considered that good anymore. So maybe like more flexibility, like various 6-drops for the move archetype, so you don't exactly know what's coming. That could be another solution.
Yeah. Well, this we went into this more than I thought, but I've loved this conversation. I love kind of ideating again. We're not game designers, but there's that part of me that maybe there's somebody at Second Dinner who's listening to our ideas and
who knows?
Putting it on the whiteboard. But I think a lot of people are sharing similar feedback in similar ways. So just kind of pulling it back to Miles Morales. I saw him played in a few games. really kind of the first week he was available at the beginning of the month. Since then, haven't seen him played in a lot of decks, whether really heavily move focused decks or otherwise. And I think that will continue, honestly, until something else changes. I just don't think there's enough to build around with Miles Morales to make him better than other 4-drops right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think its best home right now is the Kingpin archetype, where you actually move your opponent's cards. Because this is more of a reactive, disruptive deck. And then you can just slam 5 power for 1 once you gather information on what your opponent's strategy is. And this really makes Morales shine because it's really explosive. I mean, 5 power for 1 is a great deal. Like, this is demon level kind of deal, and we have to play -2 to actually get access to the card. So the card definitely is strong. It's just for now, we just can't really use it. But it's been doing quite a nice things in the Kingpin archetype. But once again, the problem is the archetype doesn't look solid enough to be that great.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you for that conversation on Miles Morales. And finally, I'd like to just turn to kind of one last conversation piece here with you, Dan. I talked about this. We had a panel episode last week with just a couple of creators out there as we talked about Marvel Snap launching and the features we'd like to see next. So if you had to pick one feature, whether that's a mode or a feature or something else, like if you got to pick what was in the next patch, you got to pick one feature to come in the next patch of Marvel Snap, what would it be and why?
Okay, if I'm thinking solely about myself, like purely egotistical pick, tournament mode. I like the game. I've always tried to compete or coach on all the games I've played, and my best experience have been tournaments or helping friends prepare for them, because I think it gets people together. It grows that sense of competitiveness and things like this. So that would be tournament mode. I think for the game's growth, it would be spectator mode. Because spectator mode means third party can actually create tournaments. Streamers can actually organize like Cube Rush or like kind of competitions more simply. So I think from a growth perspective, spectator mode is probably more useful than tournament mode for now. But I guess like looking at 3-4 months from now, we probably want both.
Yep. I can see that. I think you make a really great point. I think we've talked about the accessibility in this conversation today of Marvel Snap and how it's friendly for both casual player and competitive player alike. But the competitive player, right, needs or will need some of these features sooner than later, right? I don't think we're gonna.
Yeah, we gotta compare it to others. Like it's just.
Yep. We're not going to get them tomorrow.
It's just our ego.
Yeah. We're not going to get them tomorrow. But I think, if Second Dinner wants to play their cards right for the longevity of the game, you do need to start to release those kind of one by one, sometime soon in the next few months to start to kind of show that support and to keep people interested, keep people involved, right? We've all seen games come and go. I know we both hope, and I personally believe that Marvel Snap will be here for a long time. But obviously, in the gaming world today, anything can happen, right? Games can be success and then fail the next day, right? Essentially, so.
Yeah, I mean, internet has its own laws, and I'm pretty sure we haven't figured all of them out yet. But there's one that is that things go really, really fast. I mean, you never know when the next card game might be announced. You never know who might produce it. You never know what universe it's going to push. So definitely, I think if Marvel Snap wants to be in for the long run, they have to really establish themselves. And they succeeded at the launch part, but now they actually have to offer things that more older games or more established games have been offering.
Yep. Well, awesome, Dan. I really appreciate you being here for this conversation. I know it's late your time. Appreciate you being able to jump on here. Before we go, I'd love to just give you an opportunity. Please let the listeners know where they can follow you on social media, the content you're creating, both on Marvel Snap Zone and elsewhere, and just kind of give us a little shout out of where people can find you and where they can support the content you're creating.
Well, everything I produce for Marvel Snap is on Marvel Snap Zone, at least for the English language. I have a friend that I'm sharing a YouTube channel with, but it's going to be French. I'm pretty sure you can find it if you type my nickname, which is Den, Den, into YouTube. If you're French and want to check that out, feel free. Otherwise, like I do Hearthstone stuff almost daily. Either on Twitter, I just post pretty much everything I do on Twitter, or once again, I have a YouTube channel, but most of my YouTube stuff is French. So most of the time, like I don't think a lot of listeners will be French.
Yeah, I mean we do have a couple French listeners out there looking at my stats, but yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, so you might be sending a couple people your way. Well, Den on Twitter, I just want to make sure we get this out, it's at Den_CCG. So make sure to go follow Den on Twitter, see the content he's putting out for both Hearthstone and Marvel Snap. Den, it's been a real pleasure. Appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, we'd love to have you on again. So, we'll make sure that happens. Listeners, as always, we really appreciate you being here, supporting us. Make sure to go check out MarvelSnapZone.com. Check out the articles that Den's putting out there. And we will catch you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.
Can't Stop Snapping is a podcast written, recorded, produced, and hosted by Michael Thurman. Thanks for listening.